Hey, folks, this clip is brought to you by Omaha Steaks. Visit omahasteaks.com and type in promo code VOLS in the search bar to fill your freezer with enough gourmet food to keep your cookouts going strong through the fall. That is Omaha Steaks, promo code VOLS. Let's talk about how this is a giant recruiting weekend for Tennessee, kind of in multiple ways to me, because not only are there big players visiting, but I think really just situationally, like you win this game in front of those official visitors, it's unbelievably impressive. And I think you win a lot of points there. But also, you win this game, and I think you are well on your way to a 9-win season. And then you get a 9-win season in year 2 for Josh Heupel. How much does that sell to recruits? That's so big. I mean, the season as a whole is the bigger thing. But this game is the beginning of getting to that 9-win season to me. So this was huge. You kind of looked up some of the guys that are gonna be there. We're not gonna get into probably breaking down individual players, but there's a number of important guys here, Zach. If you have that list, just to name a few here.
Yeah, Devin Hobbs and Aiden Williams. You got some commits coming in. Jonathan Eccles, Mario Craver, who Tennessee feels like they're probably going to get. Several other players, Ryan Wingo, Boo Carter, a lot of guys. I mean, it's a huge weekend. You got to think you're going to get a couple of these guys. They're probably some of them already leaning towards Tennessee. My goodness, you go in that atmosphere, the game's going to finish. It's going to be dark by the time it finishes because college football games last 6 hours these days, it seems like. It's going to be an insane atmosphere. And Tennessee's had some good atmospheres over the years. But if you can have that atmosphere and then the win to go with it and the celebration that's going to happen in front of those players if Tennessee wins, I mean, you're probably talking about storming the field. I mean, that's probably happening if Tennessee wins this game, right? I mean, you got to think only the second time since 2004. And for the recruits that are there, you kind of hope that does happen. Because imagine seeing that if you're a 17-year-old, 16-year-old, even high school student, and you're like, man, this is like, I could play here. I could play in front of this and be a part of this. Like, that's the passion that's going to be there. I mean, I can't imagine a better scenario for Tennessee recruiting wise than winning this game in front of all the guys that are going to be in town this weekend.
Yeah, it's huge. And like you mentioned there, uh like do you say Davin Hobbs?
I think that's it.
Um, Daevin Hobbs. Um, but like just as an example, he actually just today on 3 rejiggered their rankings, and I believe he went from a 4-star to a 5-star. And he went from kind of leaning towards North Carolina to being like, all right, I'm going to go play in the SEC. His mentality kind of has changed in recent weeks. It's a battle between Tennessee and Alabama. And, it's not likely that Tennessee is going to beat Alabama this year, but Alabama, just like every year, they're going to have a packed recruiting class with 5-stars. And if you win this game impressively, you give this kid the weekend of his life and show him one of the most impressive, and in my opinion, the most impressive atmosphere in all of college football, and you go and get yourself a 5-star player this weekend. It's moves like that that can happen. I think the conversation is going on in the comments here about Carnell Tate, where I believe Mark Jones thinks we will flip Carnell Tate. Jeff, the Ohio State fan, obviously does not want to see that happen. But I think a win like this, if you're going to, win the long game with Carnell Tate, because that was never just going to be like, oh, he posts something on Instagram, now he's a Tennessee commit. It's going to be all season long where you're wearing him down, wearing him down, wearing him down, and wearing him down. Starts this weekend. Start with a giant win over Florida. Start with becoming a top 10 team, because you know who's a top 10 team? Ohio State. So you got to get up there with Ohio State, make yourself known, and really become relevant again in college football. And I just I don't think that you can really downplay how big this stretch is here. The Florida game is not the be all end all, because it will be painful, but you could lose this week, go win at LSU, still finish with 9 wins. Like, it can still happen. Losing this game is not the end of the world, even though it will be extremely painful. Um, But there is more riding on the line than just a 9-win season. It's kind of the point of just this conversation is just how kind of earth moving a win over Florida could be for Tennessee right now. Because you get Nico already being there, Nico working his magic, recruiting guys. You get another couple 4 or 5 stars in this class, set that foundation. They come in years, years later. They make your team that much better. I mean, it all begins here. It's like with the offensive line. Everything begins with the offensive line in the trenches. Recruiting is the trenches of building a program. You got to win in the trenches here. Like this is I mean, it's the Jimmies and the Joes. It's the beginning of the end of where this program is going to go. And again, not to put too much pressure on what's happening here. I feel like I'm talking it up crazily. But this is this is probably the biggest game that you're going to have the best chance to win all season long. Like, yeah, Alabama's coming to Neyland. What's the chance that you're really going to beat Alabama this year? I think it's more possible than it's been in recent years. But still, it's Nick Saban. And so you have this opportunity this weekend that you have to take advantage of. Summer ending doesn't need to be the end of your grill season. Visit omahasteaks.com and enter promo code VOLS, that's VOLS, into the search bar to order the all-American assortment today. The package has mouthwatering items from the butcher cut filet mignons to the caramel apple tartlets. And I've actually got my hands on the all-American assortment. And last night I made the burgers for the second time, actually, that come with the package. They were totally awesome. Came in this great little freezer. It wasn't even little. It's a big freezer packed way that they came. And yeah, this is an ad, but I'm a user of the product. I can tell you it's really great. And for a limited time and as a special gift to our listeners, when you type VOLS, again, VOLS, into the search bar at omahasteaks.com, you'll get 12 ultra juicy Omaha Steaks burgers for free with your order. But if the all-American assortment doesn't have what you want, there's also the build your own perfect menu option where you simply pick your favorite items and create your own grilling adventure. And the best part is that also comes with the 12 free Omaha Steaks burgers. So it's an incredible deal. Visit omahasteaks.com, type in promo code VOLS, VOLS, into the search bar and fill your freezer with enough gourmet food to keep your cookouts going strong into the fall. That's omahasteaks.com. And promo code VOLS. Don't forget that part. And that it just adds to that pressure that's on Josh Heupel. But I think it's real. I think it needs to get brought up and talked about.
Oh yeah, I agree. I mean, it's your one chance to really have that signature moment that has escaped past Tennessee coaches, right? I mean, you always look for these early signs that a coach is going to be very successful and build momentum early. And you don't want to keep on like, okay, he needs a year or two. He's got to get his guys in. He needs this or that. And you kind of make excuses for why you lose this game. Well, there is no excuse to lose this game. I mean,
no, it's not.
You're favored. It's a first-year coach at Florida. It's, they're the ones that should be making excuses for Billy Napier if they lose. Tennessee's in their second year. They got a great offense. Florida will get there. Like, you want to flip the script on that. So this is, Tennessee's been in this position so many times. I mean, 2011 at Florida, you felt like good things were going to happen there. And then Justin Hunter tears his ACL and things just kind of go downhill from there. 2014, Butch has the perfect opportunity to beat Florida and just doesn't get it done. Florida comes out on top by a point. And Jeremy Pruitt never really got close. I mean, you keep having these chances. Somebody's got to come through. And this is Heupel's chance to show that the hype is legitimate. Everything that Tennessee's building is legitimate. This isn't just a flash in the pan, just, one hit wonder type deal where he had a gimmicky offense that people like to say and scored a bunch of points last year. Like, this is his chance to prove he has staying power as a head coach in the SEC. It's the most important game Tennessee's played in at least since 2016, if not longer. I think in 2016, a lot of fans kind of already had that feeling that Butch wasn't going to be the guy. And those games against Florida and Georgia just kind of was like, okay, well, maybe I was wrong. This is playing out a little different. And then the rest of the season unfolded. Heupel hasn't given any red flags at this point. And losing this game really would be one. I think. I mean, it's just a game that you have to win, and there's, like we said, there's zero excuse to lose it. So you got to get it done. There's just no other way around it. And just if it's such a turnover in a game where it's a 14-point swing, a turnover in the red zone. It's the same thing. I mean, you win this game, you got all this momentum. The recruits you talked about, they're going to be there. Just everything's going the right direction. You lose this game to a Florida team that you should beat, and all of a sudden questions are popping up, and it's like, okay, well, when is Tennessee going to beat Florida? Then if they don't beat them this year, when are they going to beat them? When is this going to turn around? Like, it's going to be a pretty hopeless feeling, I feel like.
I I don't want to put that much onus on it where it's like you lose this game, when are you ever going to beat Florida? I think you'll be almost right back in this position next year, even if you lose to them, where I think Tennessee is still the better team. And Joe Milton will likely be your starting quarterback. He's looking good. Like, you'll be right back here. You have another recruiting class under your belt, blah, blah, blah. Like, it's not the end of the world. But does this not just feel like a this is the way that I put it to Crump. It's a fork in the road. He didn't agree with this. He actually said, like, he was like, oh, this is not going to define Josh Heupel. This is not. And I'm like, this single game is not gonna. It's going to be a series of games. But like, people look back on the Butch era and they go, that guy sucked, but he beat Florida. Like there's that much importance on this game at this point when you've lost 16 the last 17. It has that much pressure on it. And I think this can be an inflection point where if you lose, and especially if you lose like embarrassingly, if it's really close and you lose on the last second field goal and it's just, bad bounces or something, like that's one thing. But per se, you get like beat. This is a point where we kind of go like, okay, what was that? What's up? And I'm not saying that's going to happen. On paper, this is a double-digit win for Tennessee. Let's start there. But like, it just feels like a fork in the road that's going to be a game that we look back on and we go like, you remember when Josh Heupel won that game? That was the beginning of of what Josh Heupel ultimately built. That's what this feels like. That's what I hope it ends up becoming, is that we look back 2 years from now, you're going to the SEC championship game finally again, and you look back and you go like, the beginning of this was that Florida game. He met the moment. He stepped up and in front of all of these fans and in front of every single eyeball in the college football world and in front of all of these recruits, Josh Heupel took the moment and led Tennessee to a double-digit win over Florida when he needed to. And that's what I hope that this is. And just think of how exciting that, like, I'm getting chills saying that. Think of that excitement. And then losing this game would be that in terms of disappointment. Like that much excitement, except translated to disappointment. And so I all of that to say, I'm incredibly nervous. There's tons riding on this, not just in the game, but also recruiting, as we've been saying. And I don't know. I don't want to put that much on it, but I have a hard time avoiding it. Right?
No, yeah, for sure. I mean, it there's no, I mean, it is what it is. It's the Florida game. It's the biggest game of the year. It's a special week. There's a unique feeling this week in the fan base. No matter how many times Florida has beat Tennessee, this game's always going to mean something. So, yeah, it is on so many levels for the fan base, for Josh Heupel, for recruiting, the kids on the team, the legacy that these guys want to leave behind. I mean, it's Hendon Hooker. He's only at Tennessee for 2 years, but he can leave being one of the few Tennessee quarterbacks that beat Florida. I mean, this is his last chance to do that. It's Cedric Tillman. It's a lot of guys on this team's last chance to beat Florida, to kind of set off this new era and to get it moving in the right direction. Kind of like you said, a moment that you can look back on and say, hey, that's when it really took off. It does feel like, in a way, we are pumping it up a little too much, but at the same time, I mean, all those things are true. Like, that those are going to be the takes after the game. If they lose or if they win, it's going to go extreme one way or the other. There is no like kind of in the middle, and part of that's because of the state of Florida. If this was the Florida team that was coming off an SEC East Division title, or they had a coach that had been there for 3 or 4 years and it had a lot of success, I mean, you feel a little different. I mean, you feel like, okay, Tennessee's not quite there yet. Get it? They'll get there. But that's not the Florida that Tennessee's playing. I mean, Florida, they're playing the equivalent of, I don't want to say South Carolina, but because I think Florida's better than South Carolina, but it is kind of in that same range of team. I mean, there's clearly a gap between Florida and Georgia, and I really even think Arkansas and then Florida. Like, there's this big gap, and you have to beat those teams that are below that line, and they did last year for the
Yep.
most part. The Pittsburgh game could have went either way. Ole Miss was really good. Also, that game could have went either way. So you've beat these kinds of teams. The Kentucky team you beat last year was better than this Florida team. So you there's just zero reason to lose the game. I mean, unless somebody gets hurt or something crazy happens, which you can't predict, there's just zero excuse for it.